ask the city clerk to please call the roll.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Jeff Elshoff.
Here.
Dr. Joel Schroeder.
Here.
Mr. Justin Smith.
Here.
Mr. John Welch.
Present.
Miss Diane Nguyen.
Here.
And you have a quorum, Mayor.
Thank you. This evening for opening prayer, we have Father Michael Shim from Resurrection Catholic Church.
Thank you for having me this evening. Let us pray. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. A reading from the letter of St. Paul to the Romans, chapter 12. Your love must be sincere. Detest what is evil. Cling to what is good. Love one another with the affection of brothers. Anticipate each other in showing respect. Do not grow slack, but be fervent in spirit. He whom you serve is the Lord. Rejoice in hope. Be patient under trials. Persevere in prayer. Let us pray. Lord, may our evening prayer rise up to you, and your blessing come down upon us. May your help and salvation be ours now and through all eternity. We ask this through our Lord Jesus Christ, your Son, who lives and reigns with you in the unity of the Holy Spirit, one God forever and ever.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Father. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So item 5 is determined agenda additions. Does the city manager have any agenda additions? Or any council member?
Mayor.
Any council member? Okay. Move on to the consent agenda. It contains the minutes of the September 15th council meeting as well as the September 29th special council meeting.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
I have a motion. Second. Thank you. Any discussion concerning the consent agenda? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Item 7, discussion and approval of appropriation ordinance. This period is extremely high at $480,000 was spent in capital projects for Bristol Hollows, Central Park 3rd, and the Rec Center parking lot. $841,000 was expended for principal and interest payments on various gold bonds. The rest is operating expenses. Are there any questions for the city manager?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr.
I motion to approve appropriations ordinance 20-18.
Second.
First and second, any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. We have no city requested appearances this evening, so we'll move on to citizen concerns. Does the clerk have any comments from citizens?
Mayor, we did not receive any comments.
No comments.
Thank you.
Is there anyone present who would like to speak to the council? I don't have any cards requesting it, but certainly allow you to option. Okay, thank you. We'll move on to council member reports. Council member Nguyen. No report. Dr. Schroeder.
I have no report.
Mr. Elshoff.
I have no report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Smith.
I also have no report.
Mr.
And
Welch.
I have no report.
Okay. Well, very good. I have a short report. I did attend the CCUA meeting on September 24th. That was no significant event there. We just attended. Tomorrow is the ribbon cutting for 3 new businesses in Bel Aire. There's Wash, Radical Bubbles, and 101 Mobility. So if you can attend that, please join us in welcoming these new businesses to Bel Aire. I plan to be there myself. On Thursday, I plan to attend the Kansas Economic Outlook Conference in Century 2. And I want to give a shout out to Public Works for the great work they did on working the monument sign in front of the City Hall. Looks a lot nicer that they restored that sign to update it, make it, fill in the letters, make it so it's readable. So, looks great. So, move on to City Attorney. You have a report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to briefly let council know
Is your
that.
mic on?
Turn the mic a little closer. Is that better?
I think so.
I just wanted to let you know that we've worked with our court clerk who, Lindsay Nygaard, has been really successful in helping clean up old cases. A lot of times if someone is on probation or we're not able to find them or a case is not resolved for a long time, we're thinking from 2001 to 2003. So these are very old cases that we're not able to act on through our court system. They sit and they get lost. And in some cases they've been adjudicated, but the fines haven't been taken care of. So we're able to follow up in the most appropriate way in all those cases. And I was just pleased to report to council that Lindsay was able to take care of 512 open cases, including 57 that needed to be moved on to a collections process. That will clear up our docket. It will help with getting CORA requests right. When someone requests a record and we have a case that's pending, but pending from 2001, it's really not pending, we can correct that status more readily, especially as people are trying to move and vote and do other things. This is a big win for our court administration. We currently only have about 13 of those old cases that still need to be resolved, and I'm helping her through that process, but she's just done a fantastic job. Across the state, lots of cities struggle with that side of administration being short-staffed, and the judges, there's a review board that looks to how cities manage dockets, and this is a big part of that, so just wanted to let council know.
Great, thank you. Move on to City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. October's a busy month. A lot of fun things happening, so I wanted to mention some of those. This Saturday, we actually have 3 different things happening in town. The curbside cleanup is on Saturday morning, so make sure that citizens have their things to the curb by 7 a.m. And then they'll be out picking them up. If you want to know exactly what's allowed and what's not allowed, you can go to our website, and there's a list of everything on there that they will accept and not accept. That same day, we've got our brush site is open, so it's from 9 to 1. And so if anybody has some fall cleanup they need to get rid of with some tree limbs and such, they can take it there. And the last thing that's taking place is here at City Hall, we're doing our shredding and recycling. So there'll be a shredding truck here, and then the e-recycling is actually what it is. So old phones, electronic gadgets, they can bring it by City Hall from 9 to noon, and they can drop those things off. And of course, our Fall Fun Day is moving ahead on October 17th at the Rec Center from 11 to 2. It's going to look different this year, obviously, because of COVID. There's things that aren't like we typically have, but there will be some fun things to do, a car show, and there'll be some food trucks and things. So we'll actually be giving out masks to folks too. So I hope everybody can come and enjoy that, pick up a Bel Aire mask. For our local businesses, the city and the chamber are working together to pass out PPE kits for local businesses. They can come to City Hall on October 13th from 9 to 4 p.m. We'll need a coupon to get their PPE equipment, but they can go online to the Sedgwick County website under COVID-19, and they can fill out some information, and they'll get an email coupon. They just bring it in and they can pick up what they need here. There's also locations throughout Wichita and other cities, but we in Mays have the most signed up so far of people that are, or businesses that are coming, so it'll be a busy location. And the last thing, of course, at the end of the month is Halloween, and we get questioned about Halloween, what's happening on Halloween. And And I was talking to the mayor before the meeting, and as we know, Halloween is a tradition. It's not a holiday. It's not recognized by the city or any government as a holiday. And so therefore, it's up to the citizens to decide what they want to do. We will be sending out information on social media to people that want to give out candy or people that want to go trick-or-treating on ways to be safe about that with the pandemic. But unless the council would like to take any action, that's kind of how the mayor and I feel that that's up to the citizens to do. It's nothing that we as a city do or sanction, and we'll just try to help get information out from what we are learning from the health department and stuff, if they want to partake and do it safely and how to do it safely. So that's all I had, Mayor.
All right, thank you. Move on to ordinance resolutions and final actions. Item A is the city funded a number of infrastructure projects in different phases of Rock Spring. A temp note was issued to complete the projects 3 years ago, and it is now time to transfer those to a 20-year GO bond. Part of this action also special assesses the property owners benefiting from the projects. And Kevin Cowan with Gilmore and Bell is here to explain the action and answer any questions. Kevin.
Good evening, back again. Sort of the same.
And stay away from us.
Yeah, same subject as last week, and what we're now leading into is the permanent financing for the projects that were part of the special assessment process last week. So that is part of this issue that's being authorized. Another project is the Woodlawn design, engineering, and some of those preliminary costs that were also part of the 2017 temporary notes that we've discussed having the special assessment project. So those are the projects that are complete and going to permanent financing. We have a couple of other things we're authorizing. There's a really good chance there's going to be a refinancing opportunity in connection with the issuance of these bonds, which we call new money bonds. This is the first permanent financing for these projects. You have some 2011 bonds, 2011A general obligation bonds that are callable for redemption, meaning if you have the funds and you can generate those funds from a refunding bond issue, you can pay those bonds off immediately and replace them with new bonds with a lower interest rate. So that's probably going to be part of this issue if the market continues to cooperate. It would have to move quite a bit in the wrong direction for that to not happen. So we're pretty optimistic. And then the third thing this authorizes are some temporary notes. So kind of going backwards, all the things we've talked about in the last couple of months. We have Rock Spring Phase 7, paving, sewer, water, and then the Woodlawn construction, the actual construction and the city's share of those improvements. All of that is ready for temporary financing. And so there's a series of temporary notes that would be authorized by this. This isn't your final action on this. This is just telling staff and me and your financial advisor, go do the things necessary to come back to us with sale results. So the plan is we would do that and be back in 2 weeks with bond sale results, hopefully a successful refinancing, and then the temporary notes for the Rock Spring and Woodlawn projects. And that's essentially it. Some of the things that will happen between now and then, there's a notice of bond sale summary notice of bond sale that we'll publish. Some of you may see it in the Ark Valley News. We also have to publish that in our statewide newspaper. There will be it's a prospectus, but in the municipal finance world, it's called an official statement that's going to be produced so that can be distributed to potential bidders who will, again, have notice through the notice of sale, and then they'll hopefully submit bids 2 weeks from today. This is a fairly compressed timeline, a little more compressed than it would normally be this time of year, but you may recall we're working to try to have a bond sale not on Election Day, because that's the day that would really make the most sense if nothing else was going on. And we're trying to close these issues before the end of November. So accelerate a little bit, leave election night alone in terms of trying to have a bond sale that day. And so that's what we'll be working on the next couple of weeks.
Great. Any questions for Mr. Gowan?
I've got two, I guess. What's the interest rate on the 2011A series that you're talking about?
Oh, boy, I did not.
Tough question, I guess.
I didn't print that.
How much do you think it will-
I've got another topic on the agenda. When I sit down, I may be able to access kind of
Okay,
preliminary
and,
numbers.
well, if we refinance that, will we be extending the payoff
No.
date?
Nope,
We'll keep the same date, okay.
right.
I assume it's probably 2% or more we think we're gonna gain if we're gonna refinance it.
Well, yeah, I'll give you an example. Harvey County had a general obligation bond sale today, $2.2 million.
I meant the difference, not what
Yeah.
we'd actually get on the new one.
But
Okay.
just to give you an idea, it's an 11-year issue, and their average interest rate, its total interest cost was 0.83%. So yours will be longer. It's 20 years, but it's, yeah.
Almost free money.
Yeah. So what the goal is always to save at least 3% on a present value basis, your savings compared to your outstanding bonds. And I would be shocked if you're not pretty far north of that in this environment. Could be wrong, but that's kind of the baseline. And I don't think Adam Pope, your financial advisor, would recommend anything. If it came back at 3.05% savings, I'm not so sure he'd recommend proceeding with that, because these bonds are callable. In 2011s, you can call those in and pay them off at any time. So 2 months from now, it may be a better deal if the market's moving around. So you have some latitude, and I would expect it to be. You said minimum 2%, probably minimum 3%, and would be shocked if it's not more than that.
Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? If not, I'll take your motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve a resolution authorizing the offering for sale of general obligation refunding and improvement bonds, Series 2020B, and general obligation temporary notes, Series 2020C of the City of Bel Aire, Kansas.
Second?
First and second, any additional discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Item B is the Union Pacific Railroad crosses Woodlawn. As such, Woodlawn expansion will impact the crossing. UP requires the municipality to pay for engineering review and design associated with street projects that impact their tracks. This agreement allows the Union Pacific to work with the city and MKEC for upgrades needed by the Woodlawn expansion. Any questions for staff? And I do have a question. Ann, if you would mind coming to the podium, please. And I do hope that I'm not asking you a question you completely off guard and you don't know the answer to, but so a number of years ago, the Union Pacific redid this crossing.
Correct.
And they were told at that time we were going to build a 3-lane road there, and that they made accommodations for that, as I understand it.
I wasn't around at that
Yeah,
time.
I
I
wouldn't
know
either.
at that point, the plan for Woodlawn was a 4-lane road, not a 3.
Okay?
So it's my understanding there was accommodations made for that. However, whenever you have a project come forward, they always want to spend time looking at your plans, looking at their crossings, if there's any adjustments that need to be made.
Okay.
This is the opportune time to do
So
that.
that's what this is about, is reviewing the current plans and saying, yeah, we're okay with this or
Correct.
whatever.
And
Okay.
if
Okay.
there is going to be scheduled an on-site review meeting with myself, the UP engineers, as well as Mr. Engelmeyer with MKEC. And at that time, we'll walk through the project and everything that's being done and especially in that area, and they will determine at that time to make sure that everything's up to code. Their codes, their design standards change over time. So there may be some things that change at that time, but I don't know for certain until those meetings happen.
Right. Oh, the crystal ball, I see. Okay. So I was just, so my concern was, and you kind of explained it, is that we are going to expend money to make more improvements to this crossing that they should have taken care of a number of years ago when they upgraded it. But I
Not
understand the design review. That makes sense.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, and not necessarily changes that should have been done years ago. Things change.
Right.
You get new products, you learn from past mistakes and make sure that everything is up to their standards.
Okay. Thank you.
Does this also cover utilities and sidewalks, since those don't exist now where we want to put them?
Their review will cover those, yes.
Okay, so those are new since the last time.
Yeah.
The
Somewhat.
the sidewalks are definitely new.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
I assume this isn't really optional, in order to have the road project go forward, we have to pay them to do this, even though it's kind of at their request. Is that
Pretty much.
accurate? Okay.
And Miss Kelly can can collaborate, but yeah, there's, unless you don't want to even touch the railroad and kind of come in and go out, then yeah, you pretty much need to agree to this.
This actually preempts our talks on the right-of-way acquisition.
Okay.
Okay. Very good, thank you. Any other questions for Ann? All right, well, thank you, Ann, I appreciate it. Any other discussion here, or are we ready for a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I will motion to
Sure.
approve the reimbursement agreement with the Union Pacific Railroad for preliminary engineering services Woodlawn expansion and authorize the mayor to sign.
I'll second.
First and 2 seconds. Any other discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. So, item C, the developer of Central Park Third is ready to design Phase 3. So Bauman has engineered both Phase 1 and Phase 2 of Central Park Third, and the developer would like to stay with this firm. Staff is supportive of the choice. The cost of the design is included in the project and eventually spread on special assessments. Any questions of staff? Any discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith?
I move to approve a professional services agreement with Bowman Presswick Paving Improvements, Central Park Third Edition, and Central Park, and authorize the mayor to sign.
Second.
First and second, any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Item D, the developer of Bristol Hollows has utilized Caw Valley Engineering for design and would like to continue with them for paving and drainage. Staff is comfortable with this choice. The cost of design is included in the project and eventually spread as special assessment. Are there any questions of staff for Bristol Hollows project?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Elsoff.
I motion to approve a professional services agreement with Caw Valley Engineering Services, drainage improvements, Bristol Hollows Edition, and authorize the mayor to sign.
Second?
First and second, any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Item E, considering professional services agreement with Caw Valley Engineering Services. How is this? Mr. Manager, can you explain the difference between D and E, please?
Yes, so the only difference is the D is for engineering of drainage, and E is engineering design of paving.
Okay, thank you.
Only two.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Schroeder.
I'll motion to approve the professional services agreement with Call Valley Engineering Services, pavement improvements, Bristol Hollows Edition, and authorize the mayor to sign.
Second.
First and second, any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Item F, the police department has utilized body cameras for the last few years. Some were donated while others were purchased by the city. The 2020 budget contains money for replacement cameras. Chief Atterbury is here to discuss purchase and bids. Chief, there he is. He snuck in on us. I hadn't seen you earlier, so I didn't know you. Yeah, good.
Okay, so it was requested that we get 3 bids. We have gotten 3 bids, one for Axon, one for WatchGuard, and one for GTAC. That should be in the materials that were sent out. I believe you got an updated report. And what that updated report has is the 2019 storage and licensing on a 5-year contract. And what that does, it's not meant to be in this request, not added to this request. That's already spent. We've already entered into that contract. What it does is it just shows you all the bids on an equal footing.
Okay, thank you. So is that number, is that spread over 5 years?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
This includes all the equipment, all the body cameras. How many body cameras?
14.
14?
We currently have, with Axon, we currently have some of the ancillaries, the charging docks and the upload capabilities, the mounts, the body mounts, such as this,
And this
all the
is
small
one,
things.
a camera per officer now.
Yes,
And if we hire
and an extra.
one extra, or
Yeah,
that was my question, if we hire a couple new police officers.
we'll have sufficient number.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith?
just one question that I had as I was looking through the information that they sent through and did a little bit of digging online. I think that what I'm understanding, and please tell me if I'm wrong, is that the cameras that you wear are kind of one component of the solution. The actual camera that the officers wear is one component, and then there's software that the cameras upload to that lets you go get the videos, and then there's also maybe some units and some equipment that goes in the actual police cars that facilitate that kind of upload to the website. It's kind of a computer or a screen or something. And I think what I'm understanding is with the Axon cameras, all we have to replace is the part that you guys wear. And with the other bids, we'd have to kind of buy a whole new solution. Is that an accurate assessment?
In part. What we have now is the officer wears the camera, they're able to take the camera off, plug it into the port, and then upload. It uploads to the cloud and stores in the cloud in the evidence library so that we can then pull it down, use it for evidence, and if we need to redact for court or anything such as that, we can do it with the software that we've got now. Okay. With, for instance, the WatchGuard solution, they sent us 2 bids. One was for the $87,210. The other one was for $122,000. And that one is for the cameras that integrate with the car systems that could upload to the cloud. And then, but the problem with them again is they don't have the redaction software, and we'd have to spend an additional $6,000 plus $785 for 3 years and thereafter to maintain that redaction software. So,
Okay. So our current cars don't have any sort of hardware in them that interface with the cameras today?
that's not this system.
Okay.
Well, I do want to say, Chief, I really appreciate you doing the work to get this kind of background and kind of a better understanding of the different options out there and whatnot. And I think this, as far as I can tell, you did a good job with that, and I really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you.
Oh, sure.
He wants me to be
Never.
She'll win, she'll win.
Any other discussion?
So you are happy with the access?
Yes, we are.
Yeah. He's got to be happy with it, otherwise there'd be no sense in spending more money on it, right?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Schroeder,
I'll motion to approve the bid from Axon at a cost not to exceed $32,386 and authorize the mayor to sign.
And I'll second it.
first and second. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you. So council selected Batten street replacement as priority for 2020 street repairs. Our city engineer has created specs and requested bids and is here to discuss the project and bids.
You have before you the bids that came in for the Batten Street replacement. I did have a pre-bid meeting with all the contractors on this project. Talked about a few things. They do understand the importance of communication with the residents, working with the residents, making sure residents have access to their homes during the project. While it won't be vehicular access all the times, taking possibilities of providing golf carts or some other form of transportation for the residents. If you're bringing in a ton of groceries, 2 weeks of groceries, say, you can't really hoof it in by yourself. You've got to have some sort of ability to take that in. So they're very aware of that. Kansas Paving was a low bidder on both the concrete and the asphalt. They have done numerous projects like this for the city of Wichita. They did request to close the entire street down at once. It would be a much quicker process. We're talking about a 1-month closure period based on a 2 to 3 month time frame if you closed it part at a time. And this would be like half, the north half, and then the south half was what I was originally thinking. But they did come up with a better option. They do have a process where they come in and they remove the pavement, put down the base, and then can pave it through, and it's a fairly quick, painless process. This also does include replacing a small portion of the residents' driveways. Most of them have a construction joint that's about 3 feet behind the back of curb. So we'll replace that location of the residents' driveways, which allows a smooth tie-in to the new curb and gutter. So that's the picture of the project. Kansas Paving, we have worked with them on numerous projects before. They've done good work on their last several projects. Very happy to recommend them. And that's what you have before you, the bid for over excavation. As you've all driven Batten, there's locations that are really just kind of sunken in. Those are areas that are most likely going to need over excavation. Since we didn't have a geotechnical report, and sometimes it's very difficult to see what's underneath the pavement, we have a bid for over excavation per square yard. And what happens is if we encounter a soft spot, they will dig that soft spot out, replace it with rock, and move forward. That ensures that we have a nice, fairly even base without soft spots to cause any depressions in the future. So we're trying to take care of the issues as we encounter them, so we have a more longer-lasting pavement.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
just a follow-up question on the over-excavation, mostly because I see a significant difference in the per square yard estimate for that. I'm trying to understand how significant that could be in a bad case scenario. In kind of a worst case scenario, are we looking at tens of yards, hundreds of yards, or thousands of yards of over excavation?
I would say you'd be in the tens to hundreds. I highly doubt there would be thousands of square yards because I think the project itself is a couple thousand.
Okay.
So if it's 100 square yards, that raises the price $6,000.
versus maybe 3,000 for one of the competitors. So just looking at the price difference there, that could be significant, but.
My calculator says we'd have to do 400 yards to come up to the next bid.
Okay. Which is
Yeah.
cheaper on the over excavation, but.
Yeah,
Right.
well,
Yeah.
and the next bid's probably gonna do over excavation on the same spots, so
Right.
Right.
I didn't try to calculate that.
I think the recommendation still makes sense, so.
Where are the residents gonna park while this is all going on?
They are available to park at the rec center. I did talk with all the contractors before the project started about the fall festival. They are aware of that. They will not be starting until after that. So the fall festival is available, or the entire parking area is available for the fall festival.
So, but you're talking about a month project, all right?
Correct.
So,
More than likely, yes.
okay.
It'll be
That's,
Thanksgiving then.
wow. That's quite a,
And we also talked about, especially the asphalt contractors, we're very concerned about being able to get asphalt this late in the year as the seasons turn and it gets colder. Asphalt plants shut down when it gets towards about 50 degrees and below. So we did talk about having, if they had an all-weather surface like the base, the rock base, then they could leave that until the spring of the next year. And so then the asphalt had a fair comparison, and we also allowed the concrete contractors to do the same thing. So as long as they had an all-weather surface that they could drive on, as well as access to their driveways if we needed to take the break due to weather, then that's available.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
just a question on this. The prices that we're looking at, are those influenced by the timing that we're in the year right now? Are we getting a better rate because we're doing this at this point of the year?
That is part of this, yes. I do believe that giving them the option of delaying at least the paving portion until the spring did help kind of offset some of that cost difference.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question. Did you have a follow-up?
Mr. Russell.
Thank you. Did, how soon would this project be able to be started if we pass it tonight?
The soonest they would be able to start would be the Monday after the fall festival.
Okay.
Whether the contractor, I have not specifically talked with the contractor, Kansas Paving, as to if they are able to start that, right, that Tuesday.
The 19th is the earliest.
Correct.
And what is the tie into the fall festival?
The use of the rec center parking lot. Because Baton, since the fall festival is at the rec center, we
Yeah.
want to make sure that Baton is open and available for traffic coming in and out.
And I appreciate that. I'm just trying to envision residences needing to go to the rec center to get to their cars, you know, and any hour of the day, obviously, because you're talking about the equivalent of about 2 city blocks length, right?
Correct, in some instances, yes.
Yeah, and so that's, I don't know, it just doesn't feel very good to me. And I don't know if there's a better way of going about it, but it's just like, wow.
There's unfortunately, it's a long block and there's really no other option for residents to park. When we did Hedgerow a couple years ago, they had other options that were a little bit
Right.
closer due to the location.
Right. So it's,
Have you talked to any of the property owners that back up to the rec center to see if they'd be willing to take down a section of fence and let people come through the, can't remember what you call it between the houses, the setbacks?
I have not. We will be having a public meeting with the residents probably the week of the 12th. So if you award this tonight, we'll have to get that public meeting set up with the residents and then the contractor, assuming that they can, will start the 17th, and that's something that can be brought up at that time.
Might help a little bit.
And then, that would add to the cost of the project because we would have to replace and repair any damage. But I'm not sure, I mean, if you're talking vehicular traffic or just foot traffic.
Like golf carts, something that
Yeah.
fit through there easily. Yeah, if you want to do a vehicle, you're going to have to lay down asphalt or something for them to drive on, otherwise it's just going to shred everything.
Right. Yeah, and I mean,
And
restoration
a golf
can,
cart will require replacing grass and
Right.
a section of fence, but,
and any landscaping that they may have.
yeah.
Or
Well, you might
sprinklers.
find somebody who says, I don't care if you come along this side of the yard as long as you put the grass back. I don't know all the residents on that street, so.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Schroeder.
is it correct to say that we are going to continue to work on a solution to provide the best possible parking for the residents as possible? We'll discuss that more on the 12th. The residents themselves might have some ideas on how to do it, but irregardless of how that's solved, we are going to do, that doesn't change whether we are going to do that or not, and that's what is in front of us tonight.
I think that's fair. I just had a concern about that length of time and residents having to go that distance. I know a lot of these residents aren't able to walk a long distance, and some of them are elderly, and some of them are handicapped, but that's just a concern. There are no sidewalks along this street, is there?
Correct.
Okay.
And I did talk with one of the residents over there. She was one of the driving factors between getting the petition presented. And she did assist me with identifying the residents that are elderly or mobility challenged. And so I did provide the contractors with a map. There was 3 on the north and I believe 3 on the south side. So they are aware of where those folks are located.
Would it work to do the west half of the street instead of the south half?
I would not suggest doing that. It's
Okay.
just because it's just from a constructability standpoint, it's,
Throwing out the question,
yep.
and you're shoving it down.
You gotta ask in order to learn. That's
right.
fine.
Mr. Mayor, I got another question for clarification.
Mr. Schroeder, or Mr. Elsop, I'm sorry.
So you mentioned you're intending to make provisions to help residents move from their house to the parking lot of the rec center?
That will be the contractor's
Oh, that
responsibility.
will be their responsibility?
Yes.
Okay.
It will not be the city's responsibility.
Okay. Do we have any, you mentioned golf carts, but do we have a better picture of what that might look like? Is it like a fleet of golf carts that are going to be available? Does every resident get a golf cart?
So
Or-
what, the kind of the standard that I used was the hedgerow project. I know some of you were on council when that was in. Andale had rented 5 or 6 golf carts and at the public information meeting, they kind of identified key people in those neighborhoods and gave them the keys and said, you need to work with your neighbors. If they need help, you need to, you are in charge of this golf cart, make sure it's available for use for others. And so that's how they chose to handle it. I did let the contractors know, and it's really up to them. They're gonna be the ones, well, probably myself as well, but getting phone calls from the residents that they need help getting in and out. And I said, that's our primary concern, is making sure the residents have appropriate access and make it as painless as possible. Obviously, anytime you're constructing in front of somebody's house, there's access issues.
Right.
So just trying to make it as easy as possible and limit the amount of time.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I never heard feedback from how that went, but I assume it went okay.
What little I heard was, little feedback is very good. But those that I talked to said that they really appreciated it.
Okay. Thank you.
So with that plan, they had some sort of access, kind of 24/7, but not exactly. Okay, because that was one of the concerns, that contractor only works, the 8 or 10 hours they work, and then how the residents get around those other times of day, so, okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Yeah.
how were provisions made for emergency services in these types of scenarios? Will there continue to be access for ambulances, fire trucks?
Yes.
How does all that work?
Yes, when the project kicks off, the contractor will notify the emergency services, and we'll use Daryl to assist us. And fire trucks and ambulances, they've been known to drive through wet concrete if they need to get somewhere. So it's kind of a no holds bar. They're going to get where they need to get. They don't really care what's in the way.
Okay. I did a quick, just number crunching, the reclamite sealant on on asphalt for this on a 35-year project with the number of square yards that you're talking about, or not? Yeah, it's square yards, yes. I almost thought cubic yards, but no, it's square yards. And so in a 35-year project, that's about $27,000, which really brings that price of that asphalt close to the concrete. I mean, it's not quite there. It's still a little less expensive. The one concern I have with any materials, like our gentleman, Mr. Young, was it last week we spoke with? No, Mr. Edwards, David Edwards, said, you know, whatever you do, you got to seal this stuff. And if we're having water running down the gutters, which we will, because there's no storm sewer in this area, you know, one of the risks we don't want to have happen is water get underneath that pavement, because when it freezes, it will break that pavement, no matter what it is, whether it's concrete or asphalt or what it is. It needs to be sealed. So I don't really have an answer there. I'm just wanting to think about what do we do about keeping that street sealed so we don't have that problem. And maybe you have something that you can offer in that area. I don't know.
Just with as far as my staff goes, we do go out and seal the cracks that we're able to, as much as we can. We usually get 1 or 2 neighborhoods a year. It's limited by staff. If we start subbing some of this out, then it gets a little bit quicker. But that's the key thing. And with most of the asphalt in the city, we went through a period, as you all know, of very little money. When I started, we had $100,000 for maintaining streets. That didn't go far at all. And so we're up considerably more than that now, which helps. It allows us to contract out some of the work that we can't get to. But we do make it a priority. In addition to the street sealing, the Reclamite or similar products, there's also the crack sealing. So you have to add that in. The asphalt cracks generally easier than concrete does, although sometimes, depending on kind of your situation, sometimes you'll get cracks in concrete, and we do try and get those sealed as quickly as possible for both. I was just talking with Mr. Lee earlier today. He lives over on Ashton, and he has, as appropriate, he's complained for several years about cracks that have formed in his street, and they've started out small, and then they got bigger and bigger and bigger. We were finally able to get over there this year and or I think it was either this year or last year, and get those sealed up. But if you can't get to them right away because of time or budget or whatever, it just gets worse. So we do try and seal cracks as soon as we can, but a lot of times it's a time issue.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Smith.
Well, I really like that Kansas Paving was able to find a way to get this down to a 1-month project instead of a 2 or 3 month project. If I lived there, that's what I would want, is to have that shorter duration, get it done as quickly as possible so that the inconvenience can end and the street can be nice again. And so I like that recommendation. I like that they came up with a way to do that. And I think, to me, it makes sense to go with the concrete bid here, seeing that it's, you know, maybe a little over 10% higher than the asphalt bid, and we expect it to last more than 10% as long, I would say, based on the education that we got at our last council meeting. So I'd like to make a motion to approve the bid for concrete from Kansas Paving for $309,132 and authorize the mayor to sign.
I'll second.
A motion from Mr. Smith and a second from Mr. Schroeder. Was it Schroeder? Okay, thank you.
I've got another question for Ann.
Sure.
It's not totally pertinent, but it looks like we're going to save about $100,000 over what we thought we were going to spend. Will we be able to do anything with that this year, or is it just going to have to roll into next year's budget?
Probably the best thing to do this year would be to work with PP&J on doing some more patch repair. We can do some curb and gutter. We can work to bring you some costs for asphalt patches, but that probably won't come until your the first meeting in November, which is pushing it for time.
So it may
But
not
we
even
can
be
get-
able to be done.
Correct. We can get a lot of things prepared yet this fall for starting in the next year.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for the motion. Any other discussion?
Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to add my comments on this. So I concur with what Councilman Smith and Councilman Welch said about, we budgeted $400,000 for this project. It was nice to see the bids come in underneath there. Obviously, the biggest decision here is to decide whether to go with asphalt or go with concrete. The price difference is about $40,000 being $40,000 more expensive for the concrete. And I think given the history of the Baton Street, the fact that we know that water accumulation and damage is a big factor, and that concrete is more resilient against that swings definitely in the favor of concrete. I think that the price difference is such that concrete definitely is the way to go on this. So I definitely will be voting in favor of this. So.
Any additional discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Item H, Garver Engineering designed the streets for Phase 1 of Rock Spring 3, or Rock Spring 3rd. The bids are solicited for both asphalt and concrete, and our city engineer is here to answer questions.
I'm just looking, this is not the right subdivision, is it, Ken?
No,
That's Rock Spring,
it's,
Phase 6.
it's the right prices, but it's the wrong picture.
Right. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that we had the correct price or the piece. So Rock Spring 3rd is a subdivision that you previously awarded a project for water and sewer as well as the lift station. It is located a little bit further east of this project off of 53rd Street. The water and sewer is going in very well. We're getting close to being done with those, or at least time to start taking bids. The project will not start until after those two projects have been completed and accepted. As the mayor said, Garver Engineering took bids for this project. We did receive the 5 bids, and they came in a little, let's see, the asphalt was under the engineer's estimate for concrete. The concrete was over both. So the petitions, the city finance director is satisfied that we will still be within the petitions. I've talked with Garver and Mr. Lee. He has spoken with the developer. The developer is okay with either as long as he does not have to repetition the project.
As long as he doesn't have to what?
Repetition the project.
Because if he goes over the engineer's estimate, he has to repetition, is that correct?
The engineer's estimate is separate from the petition amounts.
Okay.
The petition amounts, and Ken, you may have to help me, have both have the, not only the construction project, the actual construction costs, it also has design, it's got advertisement fees, it's got city fees in it, and Ty can probably also help with this.
Okay.
I have a little bit of involvement with the petitions, but Ty can have more. Sure, please.
Ken Lee with Garver. The thing about when we're doing engineer estimates is we have when we first set it up, we estimate the cost. We add a certain percentage, and that comes up with our estimate. That estimate includes engineering, design, staking. It also includes contingencies and some change order money available for change orders. So there's money available beyond our estimate anyway normally, because we normally just bid whatever we had in our estimate. There's also a thing that's written into every petition that's called an escalator clause, also called a crawl or creep, but that's a 1% escalator per month that you can bill the project from the date it was signed. And in this instance, they were signed in, I think it was November of last year, so there's 9 or 10% crawl available that is extra money that can be charged to the project without requiring a repetition. So that some of that funding will be required in order to be able to cover the fees, but she said that Ted had looked at it and felt like there was adequate funding for that. And she said, I talked with Mr. Vitarelli, and he's fine with either product, and as long as he doesn't have to write for a higher petition, he doesn't really care. So, but that's why there's a difference. Is there's always a little extra money available that we try to leave for change orders and such, and then the crawl is not included typically as well. So.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith?
as I look at this, my eyes naturally gravitate to the concrete based on the percentage of difference there. The thing that stands out to me though is the low bidder for concrete's not somebody that I think I've seen before in our bid list. I'm not sure that they've responded to bid requests that I've seen, or at least recently enough that I remember, and not sure that I remember them doing a project for us. And so I guess I'd ask our city engineer if she's familiar with that with Prado, if that's the right way to say it, and have they done any projects in the city of Bel Aire that we might be familiar with?
They are a newer company that are trying to expand. They have done a lot of smaller projects. They did the concrete flume for the Rock Spring 3rd drainage project. So we are familiar with them to some extent. They have done very good work in the projects that we've been associated with. I did reach out to Garver and Dakota Zimmerman, their primary lead, their construction manager, and he's worked with them on several other projects, always had very good results. They have been very responsive to any concerns and very quick to correct any work. Very willing to work with you and to please. Mr. Lee reached out to Steve Degenhart with the city of Wichita, and they had very similar experiences with Prado. We're very comfortable recommending them for this project.
So they've done smaller projects here in Bel Aire, but they've done this size project in other places?
They, I believe,
They were the prime on the Cedar Creek project in southeast Wichita 2 years ago.
so if you didn't hear that, they were the prime on the Cedar Creek project in southwest Wichita about 2 years ago. So they have done a few of these projects, but certainly they don't have the resume that Kansas Paving does or some of the other contractors on this list.
Have we not been hearing from them because they don't bid asphalt? I see they did not supply a bid for the asphalt on this
Correct.
project.
They generally do not bid asphalt, but like I said, they're a newer they are a newer company. They are trying to expand, and so they may not have heard of previous projects before.
And they were actually the second low bidder on your Baton Street project too.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I didn't say this earlier, but one of the concerns I do have with these street projects is the quality of the final product, because we've had a couple incidences where they have not been very good, and that's a concern. And I'm not saying no, don't go with Prado, but I wonder, is there some guarantees that they would have about the quality of the final product? Because I don't want to end up with a bump in the road. I don't want to end up with premature cracks that we had on our 53rd Street project and other such problems that we've seen. And I mean, you're more intimately aware of those than I am. But can we get any guarantees about the quality of that product? I don't want to come back and after it's all done and say, well, we got this problem, but the only way to fix it is to mill it off, and by the way, city, you get to pay for it if you want that done.
So there's a kind of a couple phase answer to your question. As far as bumps in the road, that's particularly ride quality, and there really are no specifications regarding ride quality. The only time you get specifications for ride quality are highways and interstates. The low volume, low traffic roads, you really don't, low speed, you don't get that because they are low speed, low volume, lower traffic. That's seen for the high speed roads. So that's one answer for ride quality. For the actual construction with the cracks and premature cracking and early cracking and all that, the majority of projects you will see some cracking, whether it's asphalt or concrete. Mm-hmm. In projects like the Rock Spring 3rd, we have bonds and insurance from contractors, and we do require a 2-year warranty period. With projects like the 53rd Street that you had mentioned, we were trying to get it done as quickly and as cheaply as possible, so we did not require bonds and insurance on that, which would have raised the cost of the project.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess on the Baton Street project, we did require bonds and insurance on that project as well.
Okay. All right.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Schroeder.
If I'm understanding correctly, it sounds like Prado has done something this large before, though not for us. When they have done so for us, we've been super happy with them. When they have done this larger project for other people, they've been happy with them, and for me, I guess that's good enough. I think it's a really great question to ask to figure out whether we know who these people are and if other cities have had good experiences. But it sounds like they have to do a first project for us sometime if we're ever going to use them, and it's not our first project this size because we actually have had them do other projects. So I'm comfortable with using them.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question.
Sure.
I'm sorry if it puts you on the spot, Ann, but I was wondering, as far as the rest of the neighborhood, are the streets, I would guess most of them are asphalt, but I don't know. Do you have any idea of how the distribution of asphalt versus concrete is?
Since this is the first phase of Rock Spring Third, there are no other comparisons over there. Rock Spring Second, I believe, is all concrete. Rock Spring, the first phase, or the first Rock Spring development, that is probably 40%, 50% asphalt.
As far as the last two phases we did out of Rock Spring were both concrete phases. So the east half, which is most contiguous with this, are both concrete right now. The actual connection, that was actually the Rock Spring 7 they were talking about earlier. That project will be bidding next spring, and that's a pavement type to be determined. But the last two phases we've done out there were concrete.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? Questions?
Well, once again, we're having to decide asphalt versus concrete, and the numbers are, share the ratios, I guess, that we saw in our previous agenda item. So I definitely favor concrete on this project as well.
Same for me.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith?
I'll move to approve the bid for concrete from Prado for $449,584.90 and authorize the mayor to sign.
Second.
First and second, any additional discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Item I, the owners of Next Level Hoops has given property to their lender, Legacy Bank. It is our understanding the bank will, in turn, lease the building back to Evan McCrory. With a change in ownership, the IRB with Hoops must be satisfied. This action ends the IRB and subsequent property tax abatements. Kevin Cowan with Gilmore and Bell is here to further explain the action and answer any questions. Mr. Cowan.
So that was a pretty good summary, but I'll back up a little bit there. There are outstanding industrial revenue bonds on the Wichita Hoops complex project, and as part of that process and every IRB process, the city as the issuer of the bonds has to take some interest in the real property so that they can issue bonds, finance the project, and then lease it all to the company. The lease is the basis for the debt service payments. And in this case, it may be the last one where the city actually took title. I think if we were doing this deal today, you'd probably just take a site lease from them. But there was a statutory change, and so the city actually has title to that property. They've leased it to Wichita Hoops, and Wichita Hoops needs to get the property out of the IRB transaction so it can be freely transferred around, and they're making changes, as was mentioned, in terms of how they're going to operate it and what the bank's involvement is going to be. So to accommodate and accomplish that, the city has to deliver the deed back to Wichita Hoops. But all the bond documents say that can't happen unless the bonds are retired. So there are a number of documents that have been signed, a couple of redemption notices where Wichita Hoops, which is the owner of the bonds, has said, we're going to turn the bonds back in and consider them paid. They're going to be retired. and redeemed. And so city, with that, you can then deliver the deed back to us. They're technically exercising a purchase option by delivering the bonds and retiring the bonds back to the city. So that's kind of the crux of it. They need the property back, want the property back, and to do that, bonds have to be retired, and the city can then agree to deed the property back to them.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith?
so at the end of this transaction, what will the status be of the IRBs and the tax abatements that the city issued?
The IRBs will be retired, and so that entire transaction will be collapsed, and that means by definition the tax abatement will end.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question, follow-up to that.
Sure.
Really. So
Mr. Elson?
I'm just curious, in terms of the tax abatement ending, does that, can you distinguish between ending versus what about the time in which there was tax abatement previously? Are those taxes collected and owed, or?
No.
Is my question clear?
No, what's done is done.
Okay.
It's all going to be forward-looking. It will go back on the tax rolls
Okay.
when the city no longer owns it and there are no longer any bonds outstanding. I thought you might ask this question, and I'll mention it anyway. So this is all happening soon in October, and that means there are a couple of months left in the tax year. And I don't know how the county will handle that, whether they'll try to come back and say, well, you know, there's 2 months of taxes that could be paid, or whether it's close enough to the end of the year that it will go back on the tax rolls as of January 1 of next year. At a minimum, that will happen. It'll be part of the city's taxable property, January 1 of 2021.
Okay, the question I have, it's not clear to me that the city's made whole in this. We owe money on the bonds, right?
No. I mean,
If we left
yes,
it
you
as
do.
is, we owe money on the bonds, we have to pay the bond money.
Right.
But we get that from Hoops, and Hoops owns all the bonds,
Yeah.
so Hoops is gonna give us the bonds, so we come out zero, it's a wash for
Right.
us.
Right.
Okay, so we're not left holding the bag is what I wanna make sure of here.
Right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. The bonds say city owes the bond owner money. In this case, Hoops owns it. Hoops owes money to the bank. That was kind of the true financing, but then separate from that, we did the bonds, and the project was delivered instead of delivering cash in exchange for the bonds. So you're right. Right now, there are documents that say Hoops will make a lease payment to the city. The city will make a bond payment back to Hoops, and they're going to turn that bond back in and say, it's retired. You don't owe us any money any longer. We're exercising our purchase option. And you're right, that's going to zero it out for the city.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Smith?
So on the issue of tax abatements, it was maybe only a couple of months ago that Wichita Hoops came and asked us to revise the schedule of abatements to provide additional tax incentives for them. At the end of this, they'll be back on the tax rolls, paying full-on 100% taxes. Will they have an ability to come back to council and ask us to reissue tax abatements?
Theoretically, yes, but it would be difficult. The only way that could happen is an additional issue of industrial revenue bonds. And so if ownership doesn't change, I mean, if they were selling to a new group wholly unrelated to who owns it now, this is truly, maybe it's, you know, a group from across town and just, again, New Deal sort of thing, you could theoretically issue industrial revenue bonds for the acquisition by the new group of that facility, and that makes a property tax available, but that's how it would happen. It would have to be acquisition by a new group in asking you for a property tax abatement. And the good news is you've discussed it already this year, and you'll all remember this. You'll be fully briefed on whether that's something you want to grant and under what conditions that would happen. But I'm not aware of anything like that.
And so are you aware if the current owners are aware of the tax implications of the change that they're requesting, and have they expressed any interest in trying to do something with the city on that?
Not that I have heard, but they are aware. That was sort of one of our first responses. This is what this is going to mean, and and they want to proceed anyway.
Okay. it seemed very important to them when they were here, and so I wanted to make sure that they understood the implications of that.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Cowan? Any other discussion? Hearing none, do we have a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve a resolution of the governing body of the city of Bel Aire, Kansas, authorizing the redemption and payment of its taxable industrial revenue bonds, Series 2014 and 2015, Wichita Hoops LLC, and the sale and conveyance of certain property to Wichita Hoops LLC, and authorize the mayor to sign.
I'll second.
Is there a second? Thank you. Any other discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Item 7, executive session. We do need to have a 15-minute executive session to discuss some planned issues.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Schroeder.
A motion to go into executive session for the sole purpose of discussing the subject of land acquisition pursuant to the KSA 75-4319 exception for preliminary discussions relating to the acquisition of real property. Invite the city manager and city attorney. The meeting will be for a period of 15 minutes, and the open meeting will resume in the chambers at 8:26 p.m.
Second.
First, a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We're in executive session for 15 minutes. We ask everybody to exit
in the executive session for 10 minutes.
We have two people out in the lobby if they
I'll second.
want to hear.
First and second for another 10 minutes. Any discussion? Here or not, I'll call for a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We're back in executive session for 10 minutes. Okay. If they want to come back in, they're certainly welcome to. Okay. Move on to item 13, discussion of future issues. So we normally have workshop the second Tuesday of the month, and that is coming up October 13th at 6:30. Regular scheduled workshop. Will that work for everybody? Okay. Topics that we're looking at including for that are the 2021 fee schedule, and that should be interesting discussion. We've already had some discussions earlier in the year about the fee schedule. So, purchasing policy, and I don't know what that is looking at, but we can certainly talk about that. And Kansas Gas franchise agreement. So, I guess that's up for renewal. Is that right? Okay.
Well, Mr. Mayor, on the purchasing policy, I'd asked Jackie some questions about that, just as we've had a lot of discussions around getting multiple bids and multiple quotes on things. That seems to be something we all value as a council. Thought it would make sense for us to talk about just making that a policy so that we are consistent in what we're expecting staff to do as we look at those types of projects. And so Jackie and I are working on some maybe bullet points to talk about as a proposal.
Because I do have some other different type of concerns with purchasing policy that I might want to throw out there just for discussion. I'm not saying they have to be done, but you know, when I do audits, I audit purchasing systems, and so I usually have 4 questions I ask everybody about the purchasing system, and so I'd like to see if maybe we want to consider some of those and incorporating some of those into our processes. And I'm not saying we're not doing them, I just don't know, okay? So I'll get with you about those things as well, okay? And it's just discussion, so great. Okay? Very good. The next Tuesday we will meet at 6:30 and talk about those. Moving on to item 14.
Mr. Mayor,
I wrote the numerals correctly. Yes, Mr. Schroeder.
motion to adjourn.
Second.
First and second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, call for a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We are adjourned. Motion carries 5.